and welcome. You're watching Beat Diabetes Myths and Facts. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a positive and negative impact on different aspects of our lifestyle. Negative lifestyle behaviors are associated with an increased risk of adverse outcomes from COVID-19. While dealing with COVID, we overlooked the fact that people's lifestyles were severely disrupted. Many people have become physically inactive and developed irregular eating patterns, which has led to an unhealthier lifestyle and an aggravation of lifestyle-related complications and diseases. Now, COVID-19 pandemic has also caused significant changes to our homes, our work life, and also our stress levels. A multi-sectoral approach, therefore, is needed in promoting healthier diets and increasing physical activity. This will go a long way in helping to slow down the diabetes epidemic and controlling heart diseases. Beat Diabetes Myths and Facts will impact and help a large number of people to control and prevent metabolic disorders. Today, we have with us a panel of experts to share with you their advice on how you can lead a better and more healthy life. Dr. K. Dilip Kumar, he is an endocrinologist and diabetologist from the Vishakha Diabetes and Endocrine Center, joining us from Visakhapatnam. We have Dr. Benny Negalur. She is a consultant diabetologist at the Dr. Negalur's Diabetes and Thyroid Specialty Center and Clinic, joining us from Thane. Dr. Ranjit Kumar Khatwa. He is a fellow of Diabetes Research WHO, consultant diabetologist, Dr. Ranjit's Diabetes Specialty Clinic, joining us from Bhadrak. Thank you all very much for being with us. Dr. Kumar, if I can begin by asking you about people with diabetes. Are they more prone to long-term complications of COVID? Also, almost all people have taken 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine. Are these people safer from complications now?
People with diabetes, just like people who are non-diabetic, have also associated long-term complications. The long-term complication is nothing but persistent cough, breathlessness, or chest pain, or even myocarditis have been described, and some rarely thrombotic events affecting the cerebral sinuses or arterial thrombosis can also occur. And vaccinating people with diabetes, even non-diabetes also, is supposed to prevent about 95% efficacy in the RNA vaccines, about 70% efficacy in the other vaccines which are available in India. And they also prevent the severity and mortality associated with long-term COVID illnesses. And another important aspect is, even though they're vaccinated, some of these vaccinated individuals are also able to carry the disease to a milder extent. Especially the Delta variants are more likely to be transmissible even when they are vaccinated. Probably the infection is milder, so it's very safe to vaccinate people. Even the benefit of the advantage of vaccination is lesser in children, still sometimes the complications of mortality and the multiple influenza is very high in children. Therefore, it's worthwhile vaccinating them also, apart from the other adults and elderly individuals.
Dr. Benny Negalur, if I can bring you into the conversation, there are many doctors who actually recommend changes and modifications to one's diet to help manage chronic health conditions. What type of a diet will you suggest to people who have diabetes post-COVID recovery?
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, COVID is an acute disease, but it has given rise to chronic aftermaths. And COVID, we saw 2 things. One is, we saw new onset diabetes, and a global study that is done across the world has shown just several days ago that there is a 14% new onset diabetes. The reason for this could be that the coronavirus itself attacks the beta cells in the pancreas, and those who have a compromised beta cell reserve are affected. Also, patients who have been pre-diabetes in the past have become diabetic. Another aspect of COVID disease is that they were given a large dose of steroids, especially in patients who are hospitalized, and also in patients who managed their COVID-19 at home. Some of them also took steroids. And as we know that steroids increases the insulin resistance and produces dysglycemia in the patient. Now, how do we manage their diet? We all know that diabetes is a chronic disease. Besides eating a healthy, balanced diet, they need to cut down on their sugars, on the jaggery, the honey, and pure glucose food items. They need to decrease their carbohydrate to a sizable degree. At the same time, you need to increase their protein because protein is a tissue building substance that will help repair the tissues and also build organs and help in the metabolism. So we need about 15% protein in our diet and we need about 30% fats. And basically all diabetic patients need to take a good balanced diet which is low in carbohydrate, which is adequate in proteins and adequate also in fat with a good micronutrient content. Thank you.
All right, so important there to take into consideration all that advice when it comes to your diet. Dr. Ranjit Kumar, if I can come to you, people are still unaware, relatively unaware of the importance of regular blood sugar monitoring. They think that they will get symptoms if their blood sugar rises. Can they experience blood sugar rise without any symptoms? Can it be an asymptomatic rise?
Many people are unaware about that. But I would like to tell you that the monitoring of the blood glucose is very, very important. It will only prevent your complications. Because if you have a well calibrated and the approved glucometer at your home, you just do the blood sugar monitoring at your home and it will give you the knowledge regarding your variation in the blood glucose. And mind it, the variability in the blood glucose, one of the factors that will decide your future complication, either it may micro or the macrovascular complications. So I would like to tell you that just monitor your blood glucose at home, keep and just maintain the self-maintained blood glucose chart, and you should have the knowledge of also that the fasting blood sugar should be between 90 to 130 and the postprandial blood sugar should be within 140 to 160, or I can tell you the rest of the blood sugar except the fasting should be 140 to 160. This variability should not be like the roller and custard. This variability should be like in between this range, which can prevent your complications in the future. And second question is that some patients are telling like this, if their blood sugar is a higher side, rising, they can know their symptoms, but it is always not like this. Because mind it, 70% of the population at the time of the diagnosis, they don't have any symptoms. Similarly, the diabetes patient with higher side blood glucose level, they will not have the symptoms. So I just like to request you, please do the blood sugar monitoring at home so that you can have your symptoms. You can have the idea regarding this blood sugar. You can have the idea regarding the variability of the blood sugar, so that you can change your diet, you can change your exercise, you can talk with the physicians how to control the blood sugar, how to titrate the dose of the scheduled treatment.
Dr. Dilip Kumar, diabetic neuropathy is a very serious complication arising out of diabetes. Around 60 to 70% of people with diabetes have some form of neuropathy or nerve damage. Can diabetic neuropathy be reversed?
So the neuropathy is a heterogeneous condition. The proximal and asymptotical form of neuropathy can be reversed in type 1 and type 2 diabetes simply by good glycemic control. However, the more chronic form, the common form is the chronic symmetrical distal neuropathy affecting the limbs, lower limbs, and that is differs with type 1 and type 2. In type 1 diabetes, the DCC trial, the diabetes control complicated trial, and the follow-up part of it also showed that when you control glucose parameters strictly to the point of 7, they found that there was a good reduction of 40% reduction of neuropathy in the good control group versus the standard control group, and also especially in the relation to the cardiac autonomic nervous system. In type 2 diabetes, there are 3 long-term trials: the EQPDS trial, the advanced trial, and the STIMUL 2 trial. All these trials did not, in contrast to type 1 diabetes, did not show a benefit in terms of prevention of neuropathy. Those symptoms were reduced, but except in cardiac autonomic system, there was no tangible reversal of neuropathy because they were all probably diagnosed late.
Right. Dr. Benny, if I can come to you at the moment, it is said that low or high birth weight is associated with a risk of type 2 diabetes. Is that true?
Absolutely true, ma'am. A high birth weight, more than 4 kilograms, and a low birth weight, less than 2.6 kilograms is detrimental for the production of type 2 diabetes in the future. So basically, let's talk about low birth weight. So there is genetic causes and there are epigenetic causes. So we, unfortunately, Indians and some South Asian countries have what is known as a thrifty gene. A thrifty gene is the one which was actually made for starvation and famines and things that happened thousands and thousands of years ago. But you see, now the scenario has changed. We are living in an era of plenty where food is easily available, but our genes have not changed. And this hypothesis was given by David Barker several years ago. And he said that Indians have the thrifty genes where we have more fat in our bodies and less muscle. So we Indians are known as thin fat Indians, where we actually look thin on the outside, but we have more of adiposity or more of fat inside, and that predisposes us to increased fat in adulthood, especially when there is consumption of excess calories, giving rise to an increased amount of visceral fat and type 2 diabetes in the future. Besides this, there is an epigenetic cause, and epigenetic is the one which is an environment in the uterus to program the genes of the fetal or to have an influence on the gene that is already there. So intrauterine programming of the fetus actually dictates also the size of the baby when born and also future chronic diseases like diabetes. Now, if the baby is of increased birth weight, more than 4 kilograms, we call that macrosomia. A macrosomic child is usually born to diabetic mothers who are uncontrolled in their pregnancy. These children, actually, when they grow up, they have childhood obesity, and this obesity, when they grow up into adulthood, makes them prone to visceral obesity and type 2 diabetes in the future.
All right, very important advice there for expectant mothers as well. With that, we're going to slip into a short break. Our panel of expert doctors will continue to be with us on the other side. Welcome back. Dr. Ranjit Kumar, if I can come to you at the moment, are complications of all types of diabetes the same, or is there some kind of a variation in the severity of these complications?
Yes, there is a variation in the complications, and one is microvascular complications, one is macrovascular complications. And microvascular complication, the small vessels are being involved. In the macrovascular complication, the large vessels are being involved. The macrovascular complication includes your brain, your heart, your peripheral artery disease. That is the artery which goes to the periphery. And the microvascular complications involves your retina, that is your eye, your nerve, and your kidney. So again, the question is arised: is there any severity? Then the difference in the severity? Yes, there is a mild or moderate or severe. So if I will give you one example of the eye, that is retinopathy. For example, the mild non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, the moderate non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy, and the proliferative diabetic retinopathy, that is severe one. So in this way, what the complication I want to tell you, because it's being as a debate of the complications which is transmitted to the common people. So I would like to tell you that whatever the complication, the important factor is the controlling your blood sugar, your cholesterol, your blood pressure, and to just to stop your bad habits and take care of the heart, take care of the diet, take care of the exercise. I will definitely tell you this complication will decrease to a larger extent.
Dr. Dilip Kumar, which type of diabetes complications are common in elder people with diabetes, and can you give some tips on how these complications can be managed, especially in older people?
Elderly people are prone for major macrovascular complaint like coronary heart disease, and also prone for hypoglycemia because of their poor cognitive abilities, and also their limited limb movements. All this is responsible for their increased mortality and the tendency to fall and fracture. So that's why in the management of diabetes, the most of the world health bodies have suggested that we have to individualize the glycemic control status, and people who are functionally good, like have good cognitive abilities, able to self-care, have good self-care, they can continue to have the same HbA1c target as other people, like 7%. But in other people, like elderly people who have comorbid conditions and have poor cognitive function, they can relax the HbA1c target to 8%. Toward that extent, we have to improve the lifestyle, like improve their muscle strengthening exercise to prevent muscle falls, and that can be done by regular, at least twice weekly of push-ups or pull-ups, any muscle strengthening weight-bearing exercise. Aerobic exercise can be also advised to improve the cardiac performance. And nutrition, good nutrition is very important, balanced nutrition, especially good in protein intake and sufficient calories. Of course, person is obese, we reduce the calories. And to cater to the taste, one can prefer a little potassium chloride to improve the saltiness, or artificial sweetness, because most people, old people, don't have sensation of salt and sweet. Regarding drugs intake, drugs are very efficient for improving glycemic control.
Dr. Benny, if I can come back to you, it's been noticed that people tend to consume a lot more tea and coffee and therefore consequently more sugar when they're working from home. Will this lead to challenges in monitoring and measuring diabetes?
It will. Actually, working from home is a different challenge altogether, which we have just noticed now post-COVID. We always knew of mothers who are homemakers and they work from, and they're still working from home, but they had the cooperation of the family and they didn't have stress of time that they have to go somewhere or come back, or they have to attend and mark their attendance, etc. Here, the patients whom I have met post-COVID have told me that their office hours are not just 8 hours, but they are glued to their laptops even till 10 and 11 in the night. And so it seems that they don't have any time for exercise, which is a very required part of management of type 2 diabetes. But they are not only having tea and coffee, they may not have the sugar in it, but they are snacking all the time. And this excess snacking during work at home has given rise to extra calorie and weight gain.
Yes.
In my practice too, I have seen at least 50% gain weight. So there are challenges, and we need to up-titrate the dose of anti-diabetic drugs.
Right.
We need to also help them to monitor their sugars to get better outcomes.
Okay, so regular monitoring is also very important given the changes in lifestyle. Dr. Ranjit Kumar, should diabetes medicine doses therefore be revised when people are working from home? You know, keeping in mind that they tend to put on perhaps more weight because of a relatively unhealthier lifestyle.
So I'd like to tell you what we have just, the pandemic we are perhaps on the tail of the pandemic, and the people are staying at home and working from the home. And at the home, we know that things that they're taking food interruptly or with a regular interval, so that they can get their weight more. And their lifestyle is being changed, their food habit is being changed, so that they're gaining weight more. At that point of time, if the patient is diabetic, we have to change we have to think of the changing of the medications, because some medications are there who are giving who helps to gain their weight. For example, we take some medications like the sulfonylureas or the glitazones. They can add their weight. So that we have to think of that patient. So the patient, the obese patients, the overweight patients, and in this lockdown period of the working from the home, so we have to think of that to change the medications, or we have to give the medications which are neutralized on weight gain, or which can reduce their weight, so that gaining weight will again deteriorate the glycemic control, so that and again will increase the insulin resistance. So that we have to think of it to revise the drugs to those patients who are obese and overweight working at home without any regular good lifestyle. So we have to think of these things to revise their drugs, definitely.
All right, well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Thank you very much, doctors, for joining us on the show.